Ambassador Kethvar had served the Galactic Council for over 2 centuries, but nothing in his extensive diplomatic career had prepared him for the peculiar challenge of humanity. Standing 7 feet tall with crystalline skin that shifted from deep purple to pale blue depending on his emotional state, he represented the Zephyrian Empire in first contact protocols. His species prided themselves on logical thinking and emotional control, traits that had made them natural peacekeepers among the stars. The human ship appeared on their sensors 3 rotations ago, emerging from what the humans called a hyperspace jump near the outer rim of the Kepler system. It was smaller than most vessels the Council encountered during first contact scenarios, barely the size of a Zephyrian transport shuttle, yet it housed a crew of 12 beings calling themselves humans from a planet called Earth. Kethvar observed the creatures through the transparent aluminum viewport of the Council station. They were bipedal, like many species, but oddly proportioned with their shortened torsos and elongated limbs. Their skin came in various shades of brown and pink, covered partially by artificial fabrics in bright colors. Most curious of all were their faces, which seemed to change expression constantly, muscles moving beneath their skin in patterns that conveyed meaning he struggled to interpret. "Fascinating specimens," muttered Dr. Yilnoth, the station's chief xenobiologist. Her 4 arms worked simultaneously at different control panels, analyzing the biological data streaming from the human vessel. Their physiology is remarkably inefficient. Single heart, binary respiratory system, calcium-based skeletal structure. They should be fragile, yet our scans indicate significant muscle density and bone strength. Kethvar's skin shifted to a lighter shade of blue, indicating mild curiosity. What of their psychological profiles? That's where it becomes interesting, Dr. Yilnoth replied, her mandibles clicking thoughtfully. They display emotional ranges that would be considered unstable in most species. Joy, anger, fear, excitement, all cycling rapidly through their neural patterns, yet they seem to function normally within these chaotic parameters. The human delegation consisted of 5 individuals. Their leader introduced herself as Captain Sarah Chen, a female with dark hair tied back severely and eyes that seemed to catalog everything around her with methodical precision. Her second in command, Commander Rodriguez, stood slightly behind her, his hand resting casually near what appeared to be a energy weapon. The other 3 humans spread out in a loose formation that Kethvar recognized as a defensive posture, though they maintained pleasant expressions. "Welcome to Diplomatic Station Harmony," Kethvar announced through the translation matrix, his words converted into their primitive audio-based language. "I am Ambassador Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire, speaking on behalf of the Galactic Council. We understand this is your species' first contact with galactic civilization." Captain Chen stepped forward, her posture relaxed, yet somehow alert. "Thank you for receiving us, Ambassador. We come representing the United Earth government, seeking peaceful relations and opportunities for trade and cultural exchange." The translator rendered her words into Kethvar's native harmonic frequencies, but something in the undertones seemed lost. Her species communicated through crude sound waves, rather than the elegant combination of harmonic resonance and electromagnetic patterns used by more advanced races. Yet despite this limitation, Kethvar found their communication surprisingly nuanced. "Your vessel displays technology we have not encountered before, Dr." Yilnoth interjected, her scientific curiosity overriding diplomatic protocol. "The propulsion system appears to manipulate space-time in a manner our physicists describe as theoretically impossible." Commander Rodriguez smiled, an expression that caused the corners of his mouth to curve upward. Kethvar had learned this indicated pleasure or amusement among humans. "We're happy to share technological specifications as part of any trade agreements. Human innovation has always thrived on collaboration and exchange of ideas." Over the following cycles, Kethvar found himself increasingly intrigued by these unusual beings. They demonstrated remarkable adaptability, quickly learning the basic protocols of galactic diplomacy while maintaining their own cultural practices. They showed genuine interest in other species, asking thoughtful questions about Zephyrian history, Manthari art, and Quellan philosophy. What puzzled Kethvar most was their apparent contradiction. In formal negotiations, they displayed patience and sophisticated reasoning. Captain Chen could discuss complex trade agreements for hours without showing fatigue, while their scientists engaged with Dr. Yilnoth's team in detailed technical exchanges that advanced both species' understanding of quantum mechanics. Yet, in casual moments, Kethvar observed behaviors that seemed almost primitive. They gathered in small groups to share stories, often accompanied by explosive bursts of sound they called laughter. They consumed recreational chemicals that altered their brain chemistry for no apparent functional purpose. Most puzzling of all, they seemed to form intense emotional attachments to concepts, objects, and other individuals that served no logical survival function. "They're hiding something," Security Chief Mortgan declared during a private briefing. His species, the Krillins, had evolved from predatory hunters and maintained keen instincts for detecting deception. His scales rippled with agitation as he spoke. "Their emotional patterns show significant suppression. There are responses they're actively controlling, hiding from our sensors." Kethvar considered this information carefully. All species maintain certain privacy regarding their internal states. Perhaps this is simply their normal psychological baseline. "No," Mortgan insisted, his tail lashing behind him. "I've observed over 40 different species during first contact. These humans are different. They're constantly monitoring themselves, controlling reactions that want to emerge. It's like watching someone hold their breath indefinitely." Dr. Yilnoth joined the conversation, her datapad displaying neurological scans. "Chief Mortgan may be correct. Our deep scans reveal neural pathways that appear designed for extreme stress responses, yet they never fully activate. Their brain chemistry includes production capabilities for combat stimulants that would enhance physical performance dramatically, but these systems remain dormant." "Combat stimulants?" Kethvar's skin shifted to pale yellow, indicating surprise. "But they show no signs of aggressive tendencies." "Precisely the point, Doctor," Yilnoth continued. "They possess biological systems designed for violence, yet they suppress these responses constantly. It's as if their entire species exists in a state of controlled restraint." During their second week aboard the station, Kethvar decided to probe this mystery more directly. He arranged a cultural exchange session, where different species demonstrated aspects of their heritage. The Manthari displayed their crystalline sculptures that sang in harmonious frequencies, while the Quellans shared poetry that painted images directly into listeners' minds through telepathic projection. When the humans' turn arrived, Captain Chen introduced their contribution as human music. They activated a small device that began producing rhythmic sound patterns, unlike anything in the Galactic Cultural Database. The beats were aggressive, driving, with harmonic structures that seemed designed to stimulate rather than soothe. "This is called rock music," explained Rodriguez. "Specifically, a subgenre humans call metal. It represents one aspect of our cultural expression." The music contained violent imagery and themes that should have disturbed Kethvar. Yet he found himself oddly engaged. The sounds seemed to awaken something primal, even in his logical Zephyrian mind. More concerning was how the humans responded. Their heart rates elevated, their pupils dilated, and their body language became more animated. It was as if the music unlocked something they normally kept hidden. "Interesting choice for diplomatic presentation," observed Elder Thaxmore of the Council Oversight Committee. His ancient species had achieved transcendence centuries ago, viewing most other races as primitive but worthy of guidance. "Your people seem to have maintained connection to their evolutionary origins." Captain Chen's expression remained neutral, but Kethvar noticed a subtle tension in her jaw muscles. "Human culture encompasses many forms of expression, Elder. We believe diversity of thought and emotion strengthens our society." "Of course," Elder Thaxmore replied with the patronizing tone his species often employed. "Many younger races retain such attachments to their biological heritage. With proper guidance, humanity may eventually evolve beyond these primitive impulses." The room fell silent. Kethvar observed the humans carefully, noting micro-expressions that suggested rapid internal calculations. Their emotional control systems were working overtime, suppressing responses that wanted to emerge. Whatever they were hiding, Elder Thaxmore's condescending words had nearly triggered its release. We appreciate the Council's wisdom, Captain Chen replied after a measured pause. However, humanity has found great strength in embracing all aspects of our nature, rather than abandoning them. The conversation moved on to other topics, but Kethvar remained focused on the humans' reactions. They had revealed something important in that moment of tension. Their restraint was not natural pacifism, but active suppression of something powerful and potentially dangerous. Later that evening, Kethvar accessed the Galactic database to research other species that displayed similar psychological patterns. What he found was disturbing. Throughout galactic history, species that suppressed their natural instincts often experienced catastrophic psychological breaks when those suppressions failed. The Verlani had nearly destroyed themselves when centuries of emotional control collapsed in a single generation. The Korthak had abandoned their homeworld after their peaceful philosophy cracked under external pressure, revealing a capacity for violence that terrified even themselves. Yet humans seemed different. They had developed their suppression mechanisms naturally, without external pressure or philosophical mandate. It suggested they were hiding something far more powerful than simple aggressive instincts. As if summoned by his thoughts, Captain Chen appeared in the observation lounge, where Kethvar often retreated to process the day's events. She moved quietly, her footsteps barely audible despite her solid bone structure. "Ambassador," she said softly. "I hope I'm not intruding. I often find myself unable to sleep in new environments. Please join me," Kethvar replied, gesturing to the seating area with one of his forearms. "I find the view of the nebula conducive to contemplation." They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, watching the swirling colors of the distant stellar nursery. Kethvar studied Chen's profile, noting the subtle signs of fatigue around her eyes and the careful way she held her shoulders. "Your people intrigue me, Captain," Kethvar finally said. "You display remarkable self-control, yet our sensors detect capabilities you never utilize." Chen turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "What kind of capabilities?" "Your species possesses biological systems designed for extreme stress responses, yet you never activate them. Your neural pathways show capacity for enhanced aggression and violence, yet you maintain perfect composure. It is as if humanity has evolved to restrain its own nature." A shadow crossed Chen's features, so brief, Kethvar almost missed it. When she spoke, her voice carried undertones the translator couldn't fully interpret. "Every species in this galaxy has achieved peace through different means, Ambassador. Some transcended their primitive nature through philosophy. Others were guided by elder races toward enlightenment. A few simply evolved beyond the need for violence." She paused, her gaze returning to the nebula. "Humanity chose a different path. We didn't transcend our nature or evolve beyond it. We learned to control it absolutely." "Control implies the thing being controlled still exists," Kethvar observed. Chen's smile was sharp, predatory in a way that made Kethvar's skin shift toward defensive purple. "Yes, it does." The conversation ended shortly after, leaving Kethvar with more questions than answers. He spent the remainder of the night cycle reviewing everything he knew about human history. Their rapid technological development, their social structures, and their psychological profiles. A disturbing picture began to emerge. Humanity had achieved spaceflight in less than a century after developing powered flight. They had survived multiple global conflicts that should have destroyed their civilization. They had developed weapons capable of rendering their planet uninhabitable, then chose not to use them. Their literature, music, and entertainment were filled with violence and conflict. Yet their society functioned with remarkable stability. They were not a peaceful species that had evolved beyond violence. They were a violent species that had learned perfect control. The realization should have terrified him. But instead, Kethvar found himself filled with professional curiosity. What had driven humanity to develop such absolute restraint? What were they protecting the galaxy from? And perhaps most importantly, what would happen if that control ever failed? As the station's artificial dawn cycle began, Kethvar prepared himself for another day of diplomatic negotiations. The humans had requested discussions about defensive technologies and mutual protection agreements, topics that suddenly carried new significance given his growing understanding of their true nature. Looking back, Kethvar would later realize that this was the last day he truly believed the galaxy understood what humanity represented. Soon, circumstances would arise that would strip away every layer of human restraint, revealing the terrifying reality that had been hidden beneath their careful diplomatic smiles. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humanity freed its deepest rage, and Kethvar would stand witness to a revelation that would shatter his entire comprehension of what it meant to be human. The crisis began 3 cycles after Kethvar's unsettling conversation with Captain Chen. The diplomatic station's proximity sensors detected multiple ships emerging from hyperspace simultaneously, a coordinated arrival that immediately triggered security protocols. Kethvar rushed to the command center, where Security Chief Mortgan was coordinating response efforts, his scales rippling with agitation. 15 vessels, Mortgan reported, his predatory instincts clearly on high alert. Unknown configuration, but energy signatures match those of the Devourers. Kethvar's crystalline skin shifted to deep red, the Zephyrian equivalent of human paling. The Devourers were a nightmare that most species hoped never to encounter. They had appeared at the galaxy's edge 50 years ago, consuming entire star systems and leaving nothing but empty space in their wake. No communication had ever been established. No survivors had ever escaped their encounters. They simply arrived, consumed, and moved on. How is that possible? Dr. Yilnoth demanded, her forearms working frantically at sensor controls. The Devourer front is hundreds of light years from this sector. Our long-range scouts show no movement in their expansion pattern. Unknown. Mortgan replied grimly. But these readings are unmistakable. They're broadcasting the same energy signatures as documented Devourer vessels. On the main display, 15 dark ships arranged themselves in a perfect sphere around the diplomatic station. Each vessel was roughly 3 times the size of the station itself, their hulls appearing to absorb light rather than reflect it. No windows were visible, no external structures that indicated crew quarters or navigation systems. They looked more like cosmic predators than constructed ships. Kethvar activated the emergency protocols, sending distress signals to all nearby council fleets, while bringing the station's defensive systems online. The barriers were designed to withstand attacks from conventional weapons, but Devourer technology operated on principles that defied current understanding of physics. All diplomatic personnel to secure areas, he announced through the station's communication system. This is not a drill. Unknown hostile vessels have surrounded the station. In the human quarters, Kethvar observed through security feeds as Captain Chen and her team received the alert. Their reaction was immediate and dramatic. The careful composure they had maintained for weeks vanished in seconds. Chen was barking orders in rapid-fire human speech, while her crew moved with military precision that revealed extensive combat training. Commander Rodriguez, secure the weapons locker. Lieutenant Park, establish communication with our ship. Sergeant Williams, I want defensive positions established in corridor sections 7 through 12. Captain, Rodriguez called out, his voice carrying an edge Kethvar had never heard before. If these are really Devourers, conventional weapons won't stop them. Chen's expression hardened into something that made Kethvar's skin shift toward protective purple. Then we don't use conventional weapons. Olo. The transformation in the humans was startling. Gone were the diplomatic smiles and careful mannerisms. They moved like soldiers, spoke in clipped military phrases, and displayed coordination that suggested extensive combat experience. Within minutes, they had established what appeared to be a professional military command post in their quarters. Fascinating, Dr. Yilnoth whispered, observing the same feeds. Look at their biometric readings. Heart rate, adrenaline production, neural activity, all elevated to levels that should impair cognitive function. Yet their performance has actually improved. Kethvar was about to respond when the first Devourer ship opened fire. The energy beam struck the station's shields with force that sent vibrations through the hull. Emergency lighting activated as primary power systems struggled to compensate for the massive energy drain. Shields at 60% after one impact, Mortgan reported. At this rate, we have perhaps 10 minutes before complete failure. The other Devourer ships began firing in sequence, each beam precisely calibrated to overwhelm a different section of the defensive grid. It was not random destruction, but systematic dismantling designed to disable, rather than immediately destroy. They wanted the station intact for some purpose. All ships. This is Diplomatic Station Harmony requesting immediate assistance. HFY broadcast on all emergency frequencies. We are under attack by 15 Devourer-class vessels. Repeat, 15 Devourer vessels have engaged the station. The response came from Admiral Threntok of the 4th Fleet. Harmony. This is Admiral Threntok. We are 3 hours out at maximum acceleration. Recommend immediate evacuation to nearby system. Negative, Admiral. Station evacuation systems are compromised. We cannot achieve minimum safe distance before shield failure. A moment of silence then. Understood, Harmony. May the eternal light guide you to peace. HFY closed the communication channel and turned to face his staff. They all understood what the Admiral's words meant. There would be no rescue. The station would fall, and everyone aboard would share the fate of every other being who had encountered the Devourers. The human quarters erupted in activity as Captain Chen's team received word of the fleet's response. Through the security feeds, HFY watched as they gathered around their communication console, speaking in urgent whispers. Captain, Rodriguez said, his voice carefully controlled. Our ship's weapons systems are designed for entirely different combat scenarios. Chen nodded slowly. I know, but we're not dealing with a conventional enemy. Ma'am, Lieutenant Park interjected. If we activate those systems, there won't be any hiding what we really are. The whole galaxy will know. The weight of her response seemed to settle on Chen's shoulders like a physical burden. The whole galaxy is about to be consumed by the Devourers, Lieutenant. What we are won't matter if there's no one left to care. She turned to address her entire team. I'm not going to pretend this is an easy choice. We came here to build bridges, to show the galaxy that humanity could be trusted as partners. If we do this, that mission ends today. Mon, Captain, Sergeant Williams spoke up, his voice steady despite the station shuddering under another Devourer assault. With respect, ma'am, our mission was to protect human interests and ensure our species' survival in galactic civilization. Can't do that if the galaxy doesn't survive. Chen closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them again, HFY saw something that made his skin shift to colors he hadn't known he could produce. The careful diplomatic mask was gone completely, replaced by something primal and terrifyingly focused. Authorization code 77 Alpha November, she said clearly. Emergency protocols are now in effect. Release all restrictions on ship combat systems. Copy that, Captain, Park replied, her fingers flying over her console. Confirming authorization. All limiters are removed. Ship combat systems are now fully active. Through the viewport, HFY watched the small human ship begin to change. Panels that had appeared decorative retracted to reveal weapon systems unlike anything in the galactic database. The ship's hull itself seemed to shift, becoming more angular and aggressive. Energy readings spiked to levels that should have been impossible for a vessel that size. By the eternal light, Mortgen whispered, his scales rippling with shock. What are they? The human ship broke away from the station's docking bay and moved toward the nearest Devourer vessel with acceleration that defied every known law of physics. It should have torn apart under those forces, yet its hull integrity remained perfect. Station Command, this is Captain Chen. Her voice came through the communication system, but it was different now, harder, and more focused than before. We are engaging the hostile vessels. Recommend you maintain shields and prepare for possible debris impact. Captain, HFY responded. Your ship cannot survive engagement with 15 Devourer vessels. Please reconsider. Quote, Chen's laugh was sharp and cold. Ambassador, you're about to learn something about humanity that we've kept hidden for a very good reason. We are really good at violence. The human ship opened fire on the nearest Devourer vessel. The weapon discharge was like nothing HFY had ever witnessed. Instead of energy beams or projectile weapons, it appeared to tear holes in space itself, creating localized gravitational distortions that crushed the Devourer ship's hull like paper. The remaining 14 Devourers immediately turned their attention to this new threat, abandoning their systematic assault on the station. Their weapons fired in unison, creating a coordinated barrage that should have vaporized any ship caught within it. The human vessel simply wasn't there when the weapons reached its position. It had moved through what appeared to be controlled microjumps, appearing in different locations faster than sensors could track. Each time it materialized, another devastating weapon discharge tore into the Devourer formation. How is this possible? Dr. Yilnoth demanded, her forearms working frantically to analyze the sensor data. The energy outputs we're reading exceed theoretical maximums for matter-based technology, and their movement patterns violate causality itself. Kethvar watched in stunned silence as the small human ship systematically dismantled the Devourer fleet. There was nothing random or desperate about their attacks. Every shot was precisely calculated, every movement perfectly timed. They fought with the efficiency of a species that had turned warfare into an exact science. Within 30 minutes, 12 of the 15 Devourer ships were destroyed or disabled. The remaining 3 attempted to retreat, activating the same mysterious drives that had brought them to this system. The human ship immediately pursued, its weapons reaching across impossible distances to prevent their escape. No survivors, Chen announced over the communication channel. All hostile vessels have been neutralized. The human ship returned to the station slowly, its aggressive modifications retracting back into innocent-looking hull panels. By the time it docked, it appeared to be the same harmless exploration vessel that had arrived weeks ago. Captain Chen and her team entered the command center 15 minutes later. They had returned to their diplomatic uniforms and formal mannerisms, but Kethvar could still see the echoes of what they had revealed, the way they moved, the alertness in their eyes, the controlled energy that seemed barely contained beneath their professional facades. Ambassador, Chen said formally, we are prepared to submit a full report on the engagement to the Galactic Council. Kethvar stared at her for a long moment, his skin cycling through colors that had no equivalent in human experience. Captain, what we just witnessed, your ship's capabilities, the weapons systems, the tactical performance, none of this was included in your species' technological profile. No, it wasn't, Chen replied simply. Why? Chen exchanged glances with her team before answering. Because, Ambassador, the galaxy wasn't ready to know what humanity is capable of when we stop holding back. We are not the peaceful explorers we pretended to be. We are a species that has spent the last 500 years perfecting the art of war while learning to contain our own destructive impulses. Dr. Yilnoth stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding diplomatic protocol. Your weapons technology, the faster-than-light movement, the energy outputs we recorded, these capabilities suggest your species has achieved technological advancement far beyond what you've shared. We have, Rodriguez confirmed. Humanity developed these systems out of necessity, because we knew eventually we would encounter something in the galaxy that couldn't be reasoned with, negotiated with, or avoided. The Devourers, Kethvar said slowly. Chen nodded. We've been tracking them for decades, Ambassador. While the galaxy celebrated peace and philosophical advancement, humanity prepared for war. We knew someone would have to be ready when the Devourers finally expanded into populated space. Security Chief Mort Gann's scales were rippling with a mixture of awe and terror. Your entire diplomatic mission, the cultural exchanges, the trade negotiations, it was all deception? Not deception, Chen corrected. Preparation. We wanted to understand galactic civilization before we revealed our true nature. We needed to know if the galaxy could accept what we really are. Kethvar felt the weight of revelation settling on his crystalline shoulders. And what are you? Really? Captain Chen's smile was sharp and terrible. We are the species that spent 10,000 years fighting each other before we learned to fight together. We are the species that developed weapons capable of destroying our own planet, then chose to turn them outward instead of inward. We are what happens when evolution produces perfect predators, then gives them starships. The command center fell silent, except for the humming of computers and life support systems. Through the viewport, the debris of 15 Devourer ships drifted like cosmic tombstones, testament to the terrible reality of human capability. The question now, Chen continued, is what the galaxy chooses to do with this knowledge. We can continue to pretend to be harmless explorers, or we can accept our role as the galaxy's guardians against threats that diplomacy cannot address. Kethvar realized that this moment would define not just humanity's place in galactic civilization, but the very nature of that civilization itself. The galaxy was about to learn that they had welcomed not explorers, but warriors who had been desperately hoping they would never need to reveal what they truly were. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 18 hours after the Devourer engagement ended. Representatives from 47 species gathered in the council chambers on the capital world of New Harmony, their varied forms creating a sea of different evolutionary paths that had all somehow led to the same goal: peace through understanding. Kethvar stood before the assembly, his crystalline skin shifting through nervous purples and blues as he prepared to deliver the most important testimony of his career. Behind him, massive holographic displays showed recordings of the battle, sensor data from the human ship's impossible weapons, and detailed analysis of technologies that shouldn't exist. "Honored council members," he began, his harmonic voice carrying across the chamber through translation matrices, "what I am about to report will fundamentally challenge our understanding of our newest galactic neighbors." Elder Thaxmore, representing the council's highest authority, gestured for him to continue. The ancient being's transcendent features showed no emotion. But Kethvar had learned to read the subtle energy patterns that indicated deep concentration. 3 cycles ago, 15 Devourer-class vessels attacked Diplomatic Station Harmony. The human delegation aboard the station engaged and destroyed all 15 ships in under 1 hour, utilizing technology that exceeds our theoretical understanding of physics. A ripple of astonished communication passed through the chamber as representatives processed this information. The Manthari delegates' crystal formations chimed discordantly, while the Quellan ambassador's telepathic emanations created visible distortions in the air. "Impossible," declared Admiral Grentha of the Korthak Defense Forces. Her species had once been galaxy's premier warriors before achieving philosophical enlightenment. "No single ship can engage 15 Devourer vessels. Our entire 4th Fleet would struggle with half that number." Kethvar activated the holographic replay, showing the human ship's transformation from innocent explorer to terrifying weapon of war. The chamber fell silent as they watched humanity's hidden arsenal tear through ships that had been considered virtually indestructible. "The humans have been concealing their true technological capabilities," Kethvar continued. "Their weapons operate on principles we have classified as theoretically impossible. Their faster-than-light capability allows micro-jumps that violate causality. Their energy outputs suggest matter-energy conversion at near-perfect efficiency." Dr. Sildara of the Technon Institute, the galaxy's foremost scientific authority, manipulated the data streams with her cybernetic implants. "Ambassador Kethvar, these readings would indicate a technological development level approaching that of the ancients. But the humans achieved spaceflight less than 2 centuries ago." "That is correct, Dr. Sildara, which raises disturbing questions about the nature of human development and their intentions within galactic civilization." Representative Quilmax of the Peaceful Assembly stood to address the chamber. His species had evolved from prey animals and maintained an almost pathological commitment to nonviolence. "Are we to understand that humanity has been intentionally deceiving us, that their entire diplomatic mission was based on falsehood?" Before Kethvar could respond, the chamber's communication system activated. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the human diplomatic vessel Endeavor, requesting permission to address the council." Elder Thaxmore's energy patterns shifted toward surprise, an emotion his species rarely displayed. "Permission granted. Captain Chen, please proceed to the testimony platform." The chamber's transport systems activated, and Captain Chen materialized on the central platform. She wore the same formal diplomatic uniform she had worn during first contact, but now Kethvar could see past the careful facade. The controlled energy, the alert posture, the way her eyes automatically cataloged potential threats and tactical positions. "Honored council members," Chen began, her words translated into 47 languages simultaneously, "I appear before you to answer for humanity's deception and to explain our true nature." She activated her own holographic display, showing images of Earth from space, its blue-green surface appearing peaceful and inviting. "This is our homeworld, as you have seen in our cultural presentations, but these images do not tell the complete story. The display shifted, showing humanity's historical development. Cities rising and falling, armies clashing across continents, weapons of increasing destruction being developed and deployed. The progression was brutal and relentless. A species that seemed incapable of achieving peace. For 10,000 years, humanity was a species at war with itself. We developed agriculture, mathematics, art, and philosophy. But we never stopped fighting. Every technological advancement became a weapon. Every new frontier became a battlefield. We were predators who had learned to build cities. Representative Quill Max's features showed distress. Captain, surely your species must have had periods of peace, moments of enlightenment that led you away from violence? Chen's smile was sad. We did. Brief interludes between conflicts. Times when we told ourselves we had learned better, but then resources would become scarce, or ideologies would clash, or simple human ambition would resurface, and we would go to war again. The holographic display showed humanity's expansion into space. Massive ships armed with weapons capable of destroying planets. Colonies that were essentially military fortresses, a species that had carried their violent nature to the stars. 500 years ago, we faced a choice, Chen continued. We had developed weapons capable of rendering our entire planet uninhabitable. We could destroy ourselves completely, or we could learn a different path. Elder Thaxmore leaned forward slightly. And what path did you choose? We chose control, Chen replied simply. Not transcendence. Not philosophical evolution. Not guidance from elder species. We chose to remain exactly what we were, but to control it absolutely. The display shifted again, showing humanity's remarkable transformation. Weapons being turned outward toward space, military technology being refined for exploration and defense. A species that had learned to channel its destructive nature into protection of others. We knew we were not alone in the universe, Chen explained. We knew that eventually we would encounter other species, and we knew what we represented. The galaxy's ultimate nightmare. A species that had perfected violence and chosen not to abandon it. Dr. Sildara's cybernetic implants whirred as she processed this information. Captain, are you stating that humanity deliberately concealed advanced military technology from the galactic community? Yes, Chen confirmed without hesitation. We concealed it because we knew the galaxy was not prepared to accept what we really are. You have achieved peace through wisdom, through evolution, through guidance. We achieved it through force of will and the recognition that our violent nature could serve a purpose greater than simple destruction. Admiral Grentha's warrior instincts were clearly activated despite her species' philosophical conditioning. What purpose? Chen's expression hardened into the same predatory focus Kethvar had witnessed during the Devourer engagement. To be ready when the galaxy encountered something that could not be reasoned with, evolved beyond, or guided to enlightenment. To be the species that could do what no peaceful civilization could do: fight. The chamber erupted in discussion as representatives struggled to process this revelation. Some species showed fear, others curiosity, and a few displayed what Kethvar recognized as relief. The Devourers, Elder Thaxmore stated, his transcendent calm finally showing cracks. You knew they were coming. We have been tracking them for decades, Chen confirmed. While the galaxy celebrated its achievements in peace and cooperation, humanity prepared for war. We knew someone would have to be ready. Representative Yilandra of the Compassionate Alliance, a species that had evolved beyond individual identity into collective consciousness, projected her unified thoughts into the chamber. Captain Chen, what you describe sounds like a species that has embraced their most destructive impulses rather than transcending them. Chen nodded. That's exactly what we are. But we embrace them in service of protecting something greater than ourselves. Every weapon we developed, every tactical system we perfected, every advantage we gained, all of it was designed for one purpose: to ensure that peaceful species could remain peaceful. The truth of her words hung in the chamber like a physical presence. The galaxy had spent millennia believing that advancement meant leaving violence behind, that true civilization required abandoning the brutal necessities of survival. Humanity had proven that another path was possible, becoming perfect at violence. In order to make violence unnecessary for others, Kethvar found himself understanding something profound about the nature of galactic civilization. Every peaceful species had achieved their enlightenment because they lived in a universe where others were willing to handle the ugly necessities they could no longer face. "What do you want from us?" Elder Thaxmore asked, his ancient voice carrying the weight of species-defining decisions. Chen was quiet for a long moment. And when she spoke, her words carried the burden of representing not just humanity, but the terrifying responsibility her species had chosen to bear. "We want to continue being what we've always been, humanity, with all our violence and aggression and terrible capability for destruction. But we want to be that in service of the galaxy we've come to respect and admire." She gestured toward the assembled representatives. "You have built something beautiful here. 47 species working together, sharing knowledge and culture, growing towards something greater than any of you could achieve alone. That's worth protecting." "And if we refuse?" Admiral Grentha asked. "If we decide that humanity represents too great a threat to galactic peace?" Chen's smile was sharp and honest. "Then you'll make the same mistake the Devourers did. You'll assume that because we can be dangerous, we can be defeated." The implications of her words sent a chill through the chamber. Humanity had not just revealed advanced military technology, they had revealed themselves as a species that had spent centuries perfecting the art of war, while every other civilization had moved away from it. "However," Chen continued, "that won't be necessary. Because we're not your enemies. We're your guardians. We're the species that will handle the threats you can't face, fight the battles you can't win, and make the hard choices you can't make." She paused, looking around the chamber at representatives of species that had never needed to make such choices. "The galaxy is not a safe place. It never has been. You've been fortunate to develop in a region where the greatest threats were misunderstandings and resource disputes. But there are things out there that cannot be negotiated with. And when those things arrive, you'll be glad humanity is standing ready." Elder Thaxmore was silent for several minutes, his transcendent mind processing implications that reached across millennia of galactic development. When he finally spoke, his words would reshape the very foundation of galactic civilization. "The Council recognizes humanity's unique position within galactic society. You will be granted full membership with the understanding that your military capabilities serve the protection of all member species." Chen nodded formally. "Humanity accepts this responsibility. However," Elder Thaxmore continued, "there will be oversight. A joint committee will be established to monitor human military development and ensure it serves galactic interests rather than human ambition." "Agreed," Chen replied. "But understand that this oversight works both ways. Humanity will be watching for threats the rest of the galaxy might miss or choose to ignore." As the session concluded and representatives began filing out of the chamber, Kethvar approached Captain Chen. His crystalline skin was shifting through colors he had never experienced before, reflecting emotions for which his species had no names. "Captain," he said quietly, "I must ask, how do you bear it? The knowledge of what your species is capable of, the responsibility for protecting those who cannot protect themselves." Chen's diplomatic mask slipped away completely, revealing the weight of centuries of human choice. "The same way we've always borne it, Ambassador. One day at a time. Knowing that the alternative is worse." She looked out through the chamber's transparent walls at the stars beyond. "Every human child learns about the old wars, the weapons we built, the mistakes we made. They grow up knowing what we were and what we chose to become. It's not a burden we carry lightly, but you carry it willingly." "We carry it necessarily," Chen corrected, "because someone has to." As Kethvar watched the human delegation depart, he realized that his entire understanding of civilization had been forever changed. The galaxy had not achieved peace through the abandonment of violence, but through the willingness of one species to master violence so completely that others need never face it. Humanity had not freed their deepest rage to destroy, but to protect. They had not revealed their true nature to conquer, but to serve. They were not the monsters he had feared, but the guardians the galaxy had unknowingly needed. The revelation shook his comprehension to its very foundation, but it also filled him with something he had not expected: hope. The universe was vast and dangerous, filled with threats that peaceful species could not face alone. But they would never have to face them alone, because somewhere in the darkness, humanity was standing watch. In the end, Kethvar understood that he had not witnessed the emergence of a threat to galactic peace, but the revelation of its greatest protector. Humanity's deepest rage was not a force of destruction, but a force of preservation, carefully controlled and eternally vigilant, ready to defend a galaxy that could remain peaceful precisely because one species had chosen to master war.